In today's video, I'm going to teach you guys how to make a cowl kaftan dress. If you want to see how to draft, cut and sew this cowl kaftan dress, then definitely keep on watching.
Oh, hey, I didn't see you there.
The first thing I did was I folded my fabric in half and then I marked my baseline. Now placing my tape on the fabric, I'm just marking her bust points, under bust and hip line, which is 10, 13 and 24 respectively. I went ahead to also mark the knee line, which is 39 inches, and then I went ahead to extend all those lines. Now the length of the dress is 60 inches, I left it at that, but for the neckline, the width I'm using is 3.5 inches by 5.5 inches. So it's 3.5 inches wide by 5.5 inches deep, and it's going to be a V-neck. So I just did a slant to connect those 2 points. I'm just dividing her knee measurements by 4, and then I added about 3 inches allowance. Now from that bottom, I'm just drawing a straight line and then a curve from the knee line to meet the hip area. Then I just cut along those lines. And then I'm also cutting the neckline as well. I realized I didn't show you guys the shoulder part and the sleeve, so that's what I'm going to do now. So what I did first was I simply folded my fabric this way. So this is basically the front part, and then I drew the baseline here with my ruler, and then from the baseline I marked the bust point, the under bust, the hip line, and I also marked the knee line. So this is the baseline, bust points, under bust, hip line and knee line. I marked her knee measurement divided by 4 and I added 3 inches allowance. So that was the line I marked, and then I drew that down. And then from that knee line, this went upwards like this. So for the shoulder and the sleeve, what I did was I measured her shoulder divided by 2. So her shoulder measurement was 15 inches. I divided that by 2 and that gave me 7.5 inches. So from here I marked 7.5 inches. I marked that point here. Then I marked the sleeve length. I wanted the sleeve length to be 21 inches. So from here to here was now 21 inches. So this was 7.5 inches while this was 21 inches. Then for the neck, I marked the neck over here, a V-neck, and I obviously showed you guys the measurements I used for the neck. So I just went ahead to just cut, along the curved line. Once I'm done with the front piece, I'm just folding my fabric again in half, and then I'm placing the front piece on top of the back piece, or the front piece on top of the fabric, so I can get my back piece. The first thing I did was I just cut along, the outline or the sides of the front, just so that the front and the back have the same, side, and they're the same basically. There's no zipper allowance, so you don't have to worry about that. This is a very free kaftan dress. So just showing you the neck, I used 3.5 for the width, 4 inches rather. I used 4 inches rather for the width, and then for the depth I used 5.5 inches. And it's a V-neck in front, but the back is a round neck. So this is the back. For the width, I also use 4 inches. The width of the front and the back have to be the same, so I use 4 inches as well for the back. But for the depth of the back, I use 2.5 inches. I'm moving on to my sewing machine. I'm just, I had previously folded both pieces, so I'm just going ahead to unfold them, and then I'm placing the front piece and the back piece right sides facing. Then I'm just joining the shoulder. So the shoulder and the extended sleeve, basically I'm joining them together. I did that on both sides. And then once I've done that, I'm just measuring the round sleeve basically, so that I can know where to start shaping the dress from. So I just made sure that the parts that I left open at the top of the dress basically was enough for her arms to go through. So I left about 12 inches there, but when folded it's actually 6 inches. Then from that point I just sewed all the way down. I did the same thing for the other side. I left about 6 inches from the top, and then I started shaping the kaftan dress. If you notice, I'm leaving about half-inch seam allowance, and then when I got to the bottom part, I made it about 1 inch seam allowance. And once I'm done, that's what we have. We have an open part right there at the top, so her arms can go through. And this is what the neck looks like as well. Now taking another piece of fabric, this silk fabric is actually stretchy, which is good. So I'm just marking the baseline, and then from there I'm marking 12 inches. Remember that I left 12 inches for her arms to go through. So this is the band, this is like the wristband that I'm making for the dress, and the width of this is about 3 inches. I'm just going ahead to fold it, to iron it rather, so that it's nice and smooth. It's actually 3.5 inches for the width. So the width of this is 3.5 inches, and the length is 12 inches, but I'm cutting both pieces together. And then I just cut along that line. And then separating both pieces, I'm just cutting it like that. Now for the bottom part of this kaftan dress, there's going to be a slit, just so that there's ease of movement. You know that the top part of the kaftan is very loose, but the bottom part is a bit fitted, so the bottom part has to have a slit. So I simply just measured the width of that bottom part, and then got this midpoint or the center point, marked that, and then I'm just cutting along that line. So I made sure that the slit didn't go up to where the curved part started. I just made sure that the slit just stayed from the knee line downwards. So for the neck, I'm going to be using a bias to turn in the neck. And then for the sleeve, basically we're going to attach this band to the sleeve, but I'm going to weave the band first so that everything is nice and neat. But we're going to attach the band to the sleeve. So I've gone ahead to weave the band, and now it's time to attach it to the sleeve. So basically I started from the side seam, and then I just went ahead to sew the band around that open part. And yeah, once I was done sewing it round, I went ahead to hold both ends together, and then I sewed them closed so that there's no opening or anything on the band. And this is what it looks like. Very neat, very easy. Now moving on to the neck, I'm just using a bias tape, placing it right sides facing on the fabric on that neckline, and then I'm just sewing it all the way around. Once I'm done, I'm just going to go ahead and cut the thread and also cut the excess bias tape. And now flipping it to the wrong side, or flipping the fabric to the wrong side, I'm also turning the bias tape inward. So first of all, I sewed the bias tape on the right side of the fabric. Now I'm turning the fabric, or the dress in this case, I'm turning the dress to the wrong side, and then I'm folding the bias inwardly. So you can only see the bias tape when you look at the wrong side of the dress, but on the right side of the dress you wouldn't be able to see the bias tape. Now this is one method of using a bias tape to pipe a neck. You can do it the reverse way, so you can do it in a way that you start from the wrong side and then you finish off at the right side, so the bias tape is visible on the right side. But it's entirely up to you how you decide to pipe your neck with the bias tape. Now I'm also going to use the bias tape to turn in the slit so it's nice and neat. Same process, I place the bias tape right sides facing on the dress, so where the slit is on the right side of the dress, and then I sewed that all the way around, or all the way along the slit. And then once I got to the end, I simply just cut the thread and also cut the excess bias tape as well. And once that's done, I just turn the fabric to the wrong side, just like I did with the neck, folding the bias tape inward, and then I'm going ahead to just sew along that bias tape, basically making sure that it's on the wrong side this time. And now I'm simply just hemming the dress. I've already gone ahead to weave the hemline, so I'm just turning that in, just very tiny, almost quarter of an inch seam allowance, about quarter of an inch seam allowance, just folding that in. I did very little allowance because the fabric is by 60, and the lady that has this dress is quite tall, so I didn't want to lose much length by folding it by half an inch or 1 inch allowance or seam allowance. But basically this is what we have: simple lovely cowl kaftan dress. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe.